Hello and welcome to The Firm. On the show today, why tax writs are finding an unkind reception in courts. And SEBI proposes changes to financial reporting. On Friday afternoon, the Bombay High Court dismissed Vodafone's petition in an 8,500 crore rupee transfer pricing case on grounds that an alternate remedy is available. It's a complex case involving the alleged transfer of underlying options and the sale of Indian call centers. Vodafone took the writ route against a draft transfer pricing order as it contended that neither of these two issues involved were referred by the assessing officer to the transfer pricing officer. In the options matter, Vodafone argues there has been no transfer or transaction, leave alone an international transaction, and hence the TPO has no jurisdiction. Besides, the options are part of the main tax matter that Vodafone already won in the Supreme Court last year, so this draft demand amounts to an overlap. On the matter of call centers, Vodafone says the transfer was from one Indian company to another, and hence the TPO has no jurisdiction. So, it picked the writ route on grounds of no jurisdiction in both these cases. But the Bombay High Court has sent it back to the tax appellate process. This comes on the heels of a recent Supreme Court judgment that also frowns on such use of the writ jurisdiction. The Apex Court set aside a High Court decision in favour of the assessee, a Mr. Chabil Das, saying that the assessee had shown no grounds for moving a writ. A bench of Justice Dattu and Justice Iqbal said, when a statutory forum is created by law for redressal of grievances, a writ petition should not be entertained, ignoring the statutory dispensation. Why are tax writs finding an unkind reception in courts? To talk about this, I'm joined by Senior Counsel Dinesh Vyas and the M of BMR, Mukesh Bhutani. Gentlemen, to both of you a warm welcome. I'm not getting into the merits of the matter, except in as much to establish why Vodafone adopted the writ route and whether that was justified or not. Mr. Vyas, how would you react to what the Bombay High Court has done today?
Well, as far as the decision of the Bombay High Court is concerned, to me, it does not appear to be totally unexpected. The trend of not using the extraordinary discretionary power by the High Court by way of a writ jurisdiction had already set in. And in fact, in 2010, same Justice Wajifdar, who is a party to this Vodafone judgment, sitting along with Justice Salvi in the Mumbai High Court Panaji bench, had also, under the circumstances which were somewhat similar, declined to interfere and issue a writ petition, and had directed the petitioner to go back to the appellate authorities and have that case tested out there. So this is certainly the trend, which is not just in Bombay but also in Supreme Court, and therefore it is not something which is totally unexpected. It is on, according to me, expected lines.
All right, before I talk about the implications of this, Mr. Bhutani, was this not a complex enough matter? Was Vodafone's contention that there is no jurisdiction and hence we're taking the writ route not strong enough?
Well, I think there was adequate grounds for Vodafone to argue that the tax department indeed did not have a jurisdiction, because what the department was trying to do was trying to bring within the ambit of transfer pricing regulations where only international transactions have to be looked into. They were looking at domestic transactions, number one. So that is going beyond what the statute prescribed. On the second aspect, it was trying to tax a transfer of options which never occurred. So I think Vodafone's assumption to invoke the writ route was predicated on the fact that where did the tax department have the jurisdiction? Now it's a different story that the court has taken a view that this doesn't require any intervention, but if the court had looked into the facts of the case, it would have perhaps come to the conclusion that the department indeed did exceed its jurisdictions.
This lack of jurisdiction that you expounded on as well, Could not Vodafone have sought relief on these grounds in the regular tax appellate process that is laid down by law? And did it have to go to the High Court to be able to seek that relief? The reason I ask you this question is to be able to distinguish whether it would have gotten a more fair hearing in the High Court than in the regular appellate process.
Well, I think the High Court's powers are restricted insofar as writ is concerned. To your first question, could Vodafone have resorted to alternate remedy in the first place? The answer is yes, it could have. But you see, what happens is that these high-pitched assessments, high demands, which have become the order of the day and which is resulting in long-drawn litigation, taxpayers, possibly Vodafone realized that this would be an avenue for them to fast-track and seek an early resolution to the matter.
See, the basic requirement as far as writ jurisdiction is concerned is that the case before the High Court should not be one where there are disputed questions of fact. Or to put it differently, there is a series of case law available on the subject that High Court will not entertain a writ petition if it has to go into in a detailed manner into the aspects of fact. And I don't think this is something which would not have been kept in mind by Vodafone or their lawyers at that stage. It is something which was, foreseeable, and as I stated earlier, it is not surprising, it is not totally unexpected that this ruling has come therefore in this fashion.
Mr. Bhutani, currently Vodafone has two options. It can either appeal this Bombay High Court decision in the Supreme Court, or it can wait for the DRP order and then thereafter decide to challenge that or challenge the final assessment order in the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal. And I understand if it chooses to challenge the order in the ITAT, it would have to seek a stay on the final assessment order, and that stay could be a conditional stay, which means it may have to pay money. If it does go to the Supreme Court, do you think there is a good chance, given what the Supreme Court just recently said in the Chabil Das case, that it might send Vodafone and parties like Vodafone back to the regular appellate process?
I think it will all depend on what call the Supreme Court takes at that point in time. But to distinguish the facts in Chabil Das case, the High Court had admitted the writ and the Supreme Court said that the High Court should not have admitted the writ.
Correct, yes.
In that situation, there were several facts that were there before the assessing officer, and before a complete inquiry was made, the taxpayer resorted to filing an appeal or writ in the High Court, and the High Court had set aside the proceedings. To that, the Supreme Court reacted by saying that the department was essentially dealing with facts, and it was the facts which were not available with the tax department which resulted in an ex parte assessment. I think here we are dealing with a different situation. Here we are dealing with a situation where can you bring a domestic transaction within the ambit of an international transaction? And that's the reason I'm saying that maybe the powers of the High Court are restricted from the point of view of entertaining the writ. But if the facts are looked into, then the High Court will have a good case to intervene in this matter. So it could be anybody's guess what view the Supreme Court will take, but I think that Supreme Court will certainly examine this issue and lay down the principle whether this particular case requires an intervention or not.
Mr. Vyas, I have to ask you this question. More and more cases have been taking the writ jurisdiction route. They may be justified, and I'm not referring only to Vodafone, but as the Supreme Court has laid down or reiterated recently in the Chabil Das case, it is said that there are some exceptions to the rule of alternate remedy, and those are where the statutory authority has not acted in accordance with the provisions of the enactment or in defiance of fundamental principles of judicial procedure, or has resorted to invoke provisions which are repealed, or when an order has been passed in total violation of the principles of natural justice. Only then should the High Court intervene or allow for that writ. But several tax cases in recent past have not really confined themselves to these parameters. They have in fact approached the High Court even when it is the facts that are in dispute, as you just laid out. Do you think that increasingly, because of high-pitched assessments, assessees are choosing to go the High Court route for the fact that it would involve less time and also it would involve less money?
Yeah, absolutely right. In fact, that has been the driver. The rush to the High Court by way of a writ proceeding, by way of a writ petition, that exactly is the reason that we want justice. We don't want to stand in the queue. And the appellate proceedings, of course, involve three stages: appeal to the CIT, appeal to the tribunal, and then High Court. If it is transfer pricing, it may be only two, because from the transfer pricing order you go straight to the DRP and then to the tribunal. But then certainly that is the overriding consideration which drives the taxpayers to rush to the court, avoid the first two steps, and straightway try to seek justice at the earliest. But then, as I said, in the broader frame of the law, the way they are supposed to be functioning and the way they are framed, that certainly is not the only sure guaranteed way to redress justice.
Whether it's a case like the Chabildas case, Mr. Vyas, or a far more complex one like the Vodafone case, do you think that courts are going to be a little more hostile, if I may use that word, if assessees have not exhausted the regular appellate process? And what implications does this have for large companies who are being faced by high-pitched assessments, as Mr. Bhutani pointed out?
See, as far as the implications are concerned, I foresee that this trend, restrictive trend from the perspective of the High Courts and the Supreme Court, will continue. The message, I think, to the taxpayers is loud and clear, that be extremely careful before you approach the Supreme Court or the High Court, because the High Courts and the Supreme Courts are now, from now onwards, going to exercise their discretionary power in a very limited and in a very restricted manner. It is only where extraordinary circumstances prevail that they will want to interfere. So the message is loud and clear. And on the other side, taxpayers will have to, take that message that just because you want to eliminate the first two stages, you will not be permitted straightway to go to the High Court or the Supreme Court by way of a writ.
Well, it is true that this is setting a trend, and this is setting a trend undoubtedly to reflect that High Courts will be extremely selective in exercising its jurisdiction. But my larger question still remains that if based on facts of Vodafone's case or facts of any other taxpayer's case, a transaction has been brought to tax which is not allowed by a plain reading of the statute, then under what circumstances will the court allow intervention under 226?
But Mr. Bhutani, didn't you just tell me that there's a fairly good chance that Vodafone would have gotten, some sort of relief within the regular appellate system as well, if it was able to establish this very fact that it wanted to argue in the High Court, and had it failed in doing so, it always then had the final remedy of being able to go to the court. Having not exhausted the regular appeal, it may have jumped the queue. And I'm not just actually trying to target Vodafone in this, but several other companies that have chosen to go the High Court and Supreme Court way. Some of them, like Foster's, went directly to the Supreme Court, even without filing a writ petition in the High Court. So people are jumping the queue all the time, even if the reasons seem justifiable.
Sure. Menka, I don't think that, jumping the queue is really the correct way of looking at it.
Okay.
Practically, if you follow the normal appeals process, then it is very difficult for tribunals to grant a stay of demand. The trends have been that the tribunals don't stay demand beyond 60 or 70% of the demand raised by the officer, which makes the taxpayer's job difficult to be able to fork out 30% demand and then file an appeal in the High Court. Or rather then argue an appeal in the tribunal itself. So even before you start arguing a matter in the tribunal, you have to pay up 30% of the demand. And given the quantums involved, you're talking about fairly large sums of money. You look at it from a foreign investor standpoint, they have to recapitalize the company, they will run the risk of suffering foreign exchange losses as a result of depreciation of the rupee. So there are various factors that come into play when you have to decide to walk the path of alternate remedy.
Our final word then to you, Mr. Vyas. It seems like this strengthening trend, as you put it, might be very well from the court point of view, but it's going to be a very big negative for assessees, especially large companies, as Mukesh Bhutani points out.
Absolutely right. And in fact, according to me, therefore, time has certainly come to find out a very fundamental change in A, the judicial system, and B, the mechanism as far as the stay granting of the stays are concerned. I totally agree with Mukesh that it is not that easy. Of course, in a good meritorious case, I am aware of, I've got the stays also for payments which is very, very little. It's not that tribunal always demands for 30% or 40%. But the point is, which is fundamental, that certainly in a scenario such as this, which is so grave and so alarming, time has come to think of a mechanism where both the demands can be met, they can be very fairly handled with. And that certainly, is the challenge which we will have for the future.
Among the many other challenges this country is facing. Gentlemen, thank you so much for throwing some light on what is surely going to be a very, very contentious area of tax litigation. Mr. Vyas, Mr. Bhutani, thanks very much for joining us on The Farm. With that, we're going to take a quick break on this show. Up next, SEBI proposes changes to financial reporting.